where you can be counted as part of the client and you can vote. That's state right now.
Well, I guess it's only a budget workshop, so we don't need to call anything to order, but here we are, it's 5 o'clock, and so we can start. On the agenda today is 3-section, general, fire, and public safety.
And if you wanted to go
Just so you
further,
know, I can hear you. This is Lauren. Just so you know, I can hear you, everyone.
Great.
Sorry, I couldn't mute at first.
Hey, no problem at all. So we can start with general government.
yes.
There
Do
we
you want
go.
these two? I've given you, and you can just look at these as we go along maybe, but these are kind of the highlights that I came up with as going through and looking back through, so. It might make more sense to, talk about them as we go along. I can point them out and there's still things in here that I haven't put an amount in for a couple of things as we go through. Like today for sea level rise, I didn't know if there was some money we were going to need the budget for that versus, the grants and things. All right.
Well, we start at the top then.
Would you
Very
rather like?
Start at the top.
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah.
Was that Lauren?
General government, select board salaries. There was a raise last year.
And it looks like I gave a little bump.
For select board salaries.
Yeah,
What was it last year?
it was 10.5.
So.
And then I went up to, well, it might be 5%. So that's my other main thing, you'll notice, it's 5% cost of living, which I've booked in. So I might have done that for this. I don't have my calculator.
I see that.
Yes, it did, include 5% there too.
5% for the select board. Secretary, is that also 5%, I assume?
Correct. And if it's no different, it means that perhaps we don't use that much money, perhaps. So there's money ample to be able to give the secretary 5%.
Okay. Any thoughts, comments, questions on 41-1 general government / select board?
On the ferry fares and Quicksilver, did we not use the Quicksilver at all?
Not for the,
Not for just general ones, so but,
that's,
Okay.
this is just
That's
for
what I
a
wanna make
select
sure.
board.
okay.
Anybody have any thoughts, questions, changes before we move on? Hearing none, general government municipal building. We have,
It's just a custodian.
custodian, that's not changing, CMP power not changing, telephone going down. Fuel oil staying the same, technology, $5,000 extra for future email website perhaps.
Yeah, because I've heard from, well, if we went to, is it Google email, but it was somebody in Northport uses it and it's
Right.
$50 a month for a site hosting. So I just plugged that in there.
Great, so that's a good placeholder for right now. I know we talked to Paige a little bit about that. Supplies, down $1,000. Striping parking lot, same. IMB subsidy is
Yeah,
down 10. Down 10, that's nice.
yeah.
Any thoughts, questions, suggested changes?
Is the telephone GWI?
Yes,
Okay.
And the subsidy is down just because of the amount of revenue that we're projecting?
yeah, and you'll see that when you get to their budget, but yeah, it's 713 users, I think.
Yeah, I think it outpaced what we thought we were gonna have for users.
Oh, remember when we thought, oh, we could get 500? I remember that was always the magic. This could work.
General government groundwater, carry forward 11,000.
All right, and that is, and this was from John Kerr. I did, they haven't used that money this year. They had extra money for PFAS testing and hasn't. The state had done some testing, so, John asked if we could carry that forward,
Right.
so. Unless you think they won't need it. And I won't really know until next February when the auditor says you can carry this over, so it's not like it's a given, but.
So because it has its own line, we can carry forward funds by line rather
If it's
than
a
just,
project, if it's something that you were working on,
okay,
you just couldn't carry that supply line over. If it's a project.
I mean, does it make more sense to put this in a capital reserve account so it's there when they need it and not just dealing with this?
I know, they have, I mean, they could spend it now before June 30, but I don't think that they have anything planned. And again, I haven't talked with John, I only emailed with him, he's away, he will be back end of March.
how do we, and this is more just because it, is not, it's unfamiliar. I feel like I need to readjust every year we go through this. Is there a report that shows other carry forwards outside of the capital reserve within our budget sheet anywhere?
I think it's very rare
Yeah.
that we carry
Yeah.
anything forward.
Okay.
And again, I don't know that until the auditor says,
Well, why would the auditor say you can't carry it forward? Because
there may not be money there, you know, all depends on how
Are we in here?
we are at the end of the
Right.
year.
that's the circumstance where it
Right.
wouldn't, yes.
I never bank on it, you know, sometimes you're surprised, oh, there it is. But, and I've got another one coming up that I keeping track of to carry forward.
I think generally speaking, it makes more sense to put it in a capital reserve account. As
And
opposed
it's up
to,
to you, if you want me to do that, I mean, I can do that, but.
Cause then if it does come up that they need it, then out of the capital reserve, it's
Yeah.
there and they have it, and we can just.
then we're not having this
Dog ear it,
conversation
right?
every year.
Right, sorry.
Yeah, the only conversation we would have is like, oh, they haven't spent it in 10 years, maybe we ought to just reallocate.
Yeah,
Um,
It would make me feel better to have it and show up in a report somewhere.
then that would be on that.
Yeah.
And so when we get to the next section here, a little further down about the grant writer, that $50,000 is another one I was gonna carry forward, but if
Yeah.
that's something that you think we
Should
should.
we carry forward into a capital reserve account and not into that line item? Can we just, as we carry it forward, can we move it?
No. Not unless you at town meeting vote to change the location. I mean, putting it somewhere not in,
No, putting it in capital reserve.
So when this gets carried forward, instead of allocating money in this year's budget,
then it wouldn't be carried forward. I would write a check, say on the next warrant, and put a check and put it into Bar Harbor.
for
And then,
capital reserve,
correct, and this would just be year to date would be 11,000, and then we wouldn't be asking for anything.
I think we ought to do that. I think we ought to just pay that money into a capital reserve account right now.
I agree.
So let's do that,
Alright.
and then we won't have to have this.
Well, the state's covered most of these costs, if not all of the costs, haven't they?
Well, they covered what's happened so far, the testing, when John gets back, I think because we've had results back, the town, and things are good. But I'm letting John and the committee go over them before, and then he would probably come here and make a report, or they would.
Somebody told me they had a filter put in their house by the state.
I haven't heard of anything. The only other one I've heard of is Isabel Jackson, who John heard from her, that her well test came back good. That's the only one I've heard. Our transfer station, our testing well, and the septic field is all right, so. I don't know what other testing they might do.
Okay, so anything else before we move on to 41.4? Hearing none, general code,
That's if every year we put this amount in there in case we have any ordinances that we're going to add to the codification, add to the code book.
codes enforcement officer, planning board,
That is the board themselves.
Secretary, LPI,
What is the LPI for Dave?
What is it? The
His
plumbing
licensing?
inspector?
Okay, and so now that he has his certificate,
Yes, we won't have Bill any longer. It's
Okay.
Dave. And it's not that many hours, that's why, and his,
why it went down so
CEO.
much?
yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna combine them, but it's like, keep it, it was separate, so.
And I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but the secretary jumped $4,000.
I think the secretary is an hourly position, so it's a function of how many hours that person works, and it's not like salary. Is that right, Gina?
Yes, so-
Perfect.
and it's Carrie who,
I know, it's like, we didn't want to say it, but then I was like,
yeah, but no, I mean, she's not involved. She didn't ask for anything, no.
you were with everything.
For sure.
Supplies.
That went up a lot.
Went up a lot.
That could be an error.
The reason,
It's phone road service.
I know.
mistake, 700 instead of 10.
Why?
Oh, no, that's right. Can I ask a question? Do we have to carry the cents on all these things?
What do you mean,
Would hold numbers without $95.37.
in terms of what's already been spent?
No, just do the
Budgeting?
whole budget, just
Just
get
round
round
it?
cents.
I don't know that it matters very much. The cents probably doesn't move the needle in terms of the entire budget, although for precision, I'd rather read it. I don't know, personally, but I'm not,
Right.
it doesn't matter too much to me. I don't think it really matters. It's not gonna like affect the budget that well.
No, it shouldn't affect it very much. It shouldn't affect it at all.
All right, that should be 700, not 7,000. Sorry, Carrie, took away all your supplies.
Gary was fixing to go on a shopping spree, but not anymore.
Yeah, because I don't have any notation that was anything special that they were needing, because it's like for the assessing, it's planning board, it's
Extra zero, mapping, 2,500. Travel was, we spent a lot this year. We're asking only $100 more.
yeah, I think Dave did a lot of traveling for classes.
Okay.
There's some big, and maybe the planning board took some, did they?
Yeah,
Wendy
Wendy did
training.
a workshop. Mm.
Got 40,000 in the budget for the revaluation.
Yes, that will clear them out. They'll be done with that, late August
And that's the last that we need to pay them. We'll have it covered with
for
that.
RJD. Yes, then they're going to take over assessing. Because we have a contract with them, and the second and the third and fourth payments can come in this fiscal year, which I have some money that I'm working from capital reserve. But it won't be enough to make both those payments. And we knew, just like last year, we could have budgeted the whole thing last year, but I think we decided to break it up.
Yeah, spread it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. Assessing. So Vern is done,
He'll be done June 30. So,
end of an era.
yes.
Okay, $100 for legal notices. Any questions on that? It's gonna be a small adjustment with the supply line. $6,300 less. Um, General government administration, town manager. I note that there's no cost of living raise for the town manager.
Yeah, I just opted not to do that.
This is something, I mean, something that we'll bring up at the next town meeting, but Janet's contract is up for renewal this year, and I think.
June 30.
June 30th, so something we'll probably talk about at the next select board meeting. Administrative assistant, Dave. Bookkeeper Kathy, Tina, substitute coverage.
Just because I suck at math, all of this includes their 5%, right?
Correct.
Just not yours, okay.
Yeah.
New grant writer.
Yes, so
$1,000 carry
that's,
forward.
So my preference on that would be to do the same thing that, to move it into anything that we don't use June 30, to move it into,
We probably ought to
Capital
do it right
reserve.
now, and then to the extent
Yeah.
that we use it
Use it.
between now and then, that's where it'll come from, as
Yeah.
opposed to.
because I do anticipate probably next year, as we have a design, it will be, at least on from the sea level rise committee perspective, I think it will be, there will be opportunities to spend that.
Okay, good.
Great, that sounds like a good thing, and we'll clean this up a little bit and not have to do it. And for postage. We do much postage these days?
Excuse me? Do we,
Using, it looks like $1,400 year to date, $6,500.
yes, we do.
Okay.
I mean, we have box holders, we have the meter that we feed, the envelopes that we purchase. And everybody uses our meter, so that's why I make sure every department has its own money, like the health center, I suck in their money. Fred, your $83 is going pretty soon, you know.
What is the year-to-date month actual, like, what month is that through? Is that through February or is that?
You, for the budget, oh, for this amount that we've used,
Correct.
I think it was, early, it might have been late January, early February.
Okay.
When Kathy,
Yeah.
gave us the budget thing.
Yeah.
We got. Copy overage, that's gone up. We're expecting something for that line item to be more. $1,700 budgeted last year, $700 spent this year, 4,000 budgeted next year.
Yeah, it just seems like with everybody, using our copier in the color, and that includes, no, it doesn't, but that covers no, it's just overages.
There's an overage.
Because our contract gives us X number of copies a month, and then we're billed each month for what we've gone over.
Weird, for the big copier?
Yeah, well, I've got 1, 2.
We
Also,
pay a subscription fee for the copier, huh?
well, it's a service contract, which you want to have, but that's down below and under
But we have to
service contract, but
we
this
have to
is
pay per copy.
above, yeah, we do,
Weird.
yeah.
I mean, I wonder how long is that contract running for?
I think it goes year to year.
Just seems crazy. It seems like, I mean, maybe it's not. It's hard for me to even think about what.
I guess if we
cost
bought
ought
the
to be.
copier outright, you know,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have that, but we don't, and we go through a lot of copies, and you want that contract, that service contract on there for coming out here, that it take them a day,
Yeah,
you know, it's, wow, it's expensive.
you'd have to plan to throw away copiers as they broke, I suspect, if you didn't do that.
Yeah, and we kind of, we nursed them along. The guy was here last fixing something. He left some kind of little thing with Tina on upgrading it, you know, and I said, I think we're doing good right now.
Does the copy overages, does that cover like ink and all of that too?
That comes under the contract. That toner is part of the contract, which comes up down below. Service contracts, it's in there.
$1,000 a year. So we're talking $30,000 a year for copying.
Well, no, I mean, that 25 is for Trio.
Oh, it's more than a copier.
Yes,
I
it's
getcha,
service
I getcha.
contracts. The Trio one alone is about 16,000.
I'd be curious to know
For all
what the overall copying contract is, plus the 4,000 in overage. I mean, you could buy a relatively nice copier every year for that.
Well, that would be, but these are nice copies.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they're big,
I'm just
and they're
curious.
rugged. No, I know, but they are rugged.
So do you mind looking that up for the next budget meeting? There's
Sure.
Nothing pressing right now.
So what we've spent in a year, or
Just the contract price for that copier.
I guess when they're all thrown in together, so there's the health center and there's our hallway, the color one.
Unless everybody, I sort of like to go down that road, but if everybody thinks it's a waste of time, then I don't need to.
Information's investing.
Great, we'll do it. Okay, service contracts, we just talked about traveling again, which is nice, no more pandemic stuff, maybe not no more, but at least traveling's happening. Fair fairs, MMA dues, Sally Daggett, rate increase, but we've gone down a little bit in the line item, looks like we haven't used our attorneys as much as other years, that can change depending on. can
Yes,
change.
today.
Election clerks, town report, cleaning expenses, legal notices, yearbook advertising. Anybody have any thoughts, questions about this? All right, moving on, early education, preschool subsidy, $75,000. This is what they've requested and been given every year. Any thoughts on that?
They're not asking for any more than the 75, right?
They are not, no.
No,
I believe it.
General government, major subdivision, road committee, $500. Engineering consulting, $10,000.
so I plugged in 10, I don't know what you think of that, we had 20 last year. And I'm thinking I still have some bills, I probably will pay Stephen Blatt out of this, but going forward, like for the next year, I don't know if we want, I plugged that in there, but I had in my mind, a question about it, so,
The $10,000.
yeah.
What is the question in your mind about?
Well, whether I should put it in there or just plan on using the donations, going forward. We do have in capital reserve for the Up Island public
Understand.
safety garage. I think it's around $15,000 that we put away for that. So if anything,
I mean, I'd be more in favor of striking that, and if we need more money elsewhere, lumping it in with everything else, it's just a little bit more transparent to have it in one bucket than to have a $10,000 thing that's drawn for the same project somewhere else in the budget.
all right, so I
Just harder
delete
to
that.
follow. If that's my preference, but I'll throw it out to the group to see.
My only question is, did we increase it last year because of the concerns related to the dirt roads and is there further work? I know-
No, this was all public safety.
Okay,
Yeah, I remember Lauren, we wasn't gonna do anything. I said, well, we need some money to
Start
get
thinking
this
about the
going, yeah, so
engineering.
that's where the.
okay, yeah, then I'd rather have it for the project.
Yeah, now we have a big bond out there, we have a lot of donations, we have money that we can draw from, so to the extent that we're spending money in that project, that's where it ought to come from, and not a single line item here, I think.
Yeah,
So we're striking the
That's
10.
right, in that 10, yeah. General government comprehensive plan, we're not doing that right now, nothing.
I wanted to take it out of there, but I thought I would jinx myself.
General government board of appeals, we haven't had an appeal lately, knock on wood.
And they've got a full board now, I think.
That's a good thing. So not much to talk about there, I don't think. Moving on to public safety, fire protection services. You guys are here in person. Thank you for showing up. It's always good to see you guys. We'll start with Mert. Mert, do you want to walk us through your budget? You want me to just go through it, or what's your preference?
Janet and I met and reviewed each line. Not a lot of changes except in my salary line. It looks like there's an increase there, but we did some adjustments and estimated for a complete year. So we did some adjustments.
Yeah, I increased your hours, I think. That's what it turned out to be compared to your time cards. I don't think we had an accurate,
Right.
but you don't always use it all. So I mean, I can easily give a cost. of
Correct,
increase,
because
but-
the current year, we've half, more than half spent, so we're not gonna it's gonna go over a tad by the end of this fiscal year. So that's what we were adjusting for the following year.
I think, yeah, that 17,000 for, fire chief is very reasonable.
Yeah.
As it stands, I don't think there's any issue with that in my mind.
And
Mark
then
does
there's
a lot.
only a couple other lines where we shaved a little. Acre Island, we knocked it down 1,000, but in dues, we, shaved it $100, but everything else is the same. So nothing drastic.
How are you feeling about, personnel and staffing levels for the fire department?
Put in what?
How are you feeling about staffing levels for the fire department?
We're holding, we've lost one member, just had more family matters, but last night I gained somebody new and they got to go through the process. So if I lose one, I might gain one, but I never get any more.
Yeah.
Doing this all the time. So we're holding at 10.
Is that enough, do you think?
No, it's never enough. But
What
we
was
make,
your, what was your goal be? How many people?
well, when I first was chief, I think I had anywhere from 24 members. It was a new era then. But over time, I mean, I can give you a long 2-page list of different people I've rifled through the island. They've either moved on, died off, or just got old. And the younger generation is just struggling to stay alive and a family and all that. So
Right.
there's a lot of weight and competition against participating in public service. So do the best. I hope there's still a population around before I retire.
Any questions for Mert about his budget? Suggestions for anything?
I think that's good.
Hearing none. Thank you, Mert, for showing up. Public Safety Office, Fred, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Most of the lines I flatlined, there was no increases. There was an increase under consultants. We went from, 500 to 900. I think you can see in the year to date, it was not far from being overspent. Some of that is because of the increase in dues. And I don't foresee that going down a whole lot. And then that was pretty much out of the main body of the budget. And then the only thing that we had under me carry was the COL, cost of living, that everybody else was getting. And then we are gonna be using the EMA mandated training, which is 43.4. Now that we're doing all these grants, I actually almost asked for an increase in this budget, but I didn't on that one. Because we're doing all these grants, we have to be NIMS compliant. And we don't wanna miss that audit. We don't wanna get a federal audit to make sure that we're doing that all this year is gonna go towards training people and possibly bringing in additional instructors or sending people out of town to be at the level that they should be to be NIMS compliant. There's a couple towns in the area that got audited last year on that. I don't really want to go there. I would like to take the water rescue line, and I'd like to rename that, is what I'd like to do. First of all, this is where we would do our ice water rescue. We have some cold water suits that are gonna need to be replaced because they're now 17 years old. But I would like to rename this to a maritime emergency line. And the reason I would like to do that is because this is an established line that we've had for a lot of years. I'm going back probably 10, 12 years, we've had this line. And if you go for a grant for an emergency boat, of any sort, whether it's a small one or a big one, you have an established line that you could use for your grant request. We have a line for maritime emergencies, and that's a good place to start for the grant process for both. That's why we started a budget line for water rescue back when, I believe Marnie was still town manager then, was so that in case we ever wanted to go get a grant, we would have an established budget line for that, which is usually what, especially if it's a, you know, firefighter grant or a law enforcement grant, to get a boat, you're gonna need that budget line in place. So that's why we always kept that. There isn't much in there. As a matter of fact, we was gonna try to have the ice water rescue this year, and the cost of the class exceeded what we had in the budget line, so I just, and they weren't available. They weren't gonna be available anyways, so, but that's what that would be used for. There was no increases in that.
Hey, Fred, where do we stand with municipal compliance with training? I know we've done some online training. Where do we stand as a board and as a town with that?
You mean the BLS stuff?
Yeah, I did some
Well,
online training. I can't remember exactly.
I think Carrie's kind of tasked with being in charge of that. I do this all the time. I have to stay ahead of them. I'm not gonna get caught
Yeah.
not being compliant. Carrie will tell you, I'm all the time looking at those books, and I think we're in good shape because we've always done this.
Yeah.
They changed the platform this year, and we got a new platform which Carrie manages, and she could actually comment on the actual platform. But I think it's just a matter of, after the pandemic, getting everybody back into where they're supposed to be. Because everybody always did so good at it.
Mhm.
You know, Janet always had them so that, you know, during the winter time, the office staff knew that, oh, it's time to sit at our computers and get our mandatory training done. And the fire department and we jointly train for our BLS training. Some of the other departments I don't know about. Carrie will know more because she's working with them, but I think there's just, the pandemic kind of really threw things off.
Yeah.
And we're just starting, and I say this in a lot of ways, we're just starting to get our feet under us again. I'm not trying to be vague in that answer, it's just, it really was, without being able to get people together for training, you know, it's like NIMS, we're getting our feet under us now, and Carrie's doing a very good job of working with everybody, getting their online training. That's a big task that she did, getting that set up, so kudos to Carrie.
Yeah, we are all, and well, I think there's 5 probably, if they're all an hour, it's hard to find time. I see people, you know, trying to scoot into a room and try to do it, so, well, I'll look forward to doing mine maybe next week. Take it on, but-
And that's why doing the initial training, somebody new comes in. And this is what Carrie's doing right now. When they first come in, let them do their initial training on the training site, because you get the initial certification. But sitting down every year and doing that same class on that site was always very difficult to keep people enthusiastic about that. So some of these classes we can do in person now. The harassment training for review, the review classes. We're just starting to get that going now. Of course, in fire and EMS, we've had to do that because they really look at us closely. And police, I mean, they look at all of these departments very closely. But now we can do it in person more, so I think it's gonna be easier for the employees going in and doing bloodborne pathogens, doing stuff like that. Do it in a 1-hour class and cover 4 classes in an hour. It's more, you know, it's easier for the employees, I would think.
Sounds good.
So to finish out the public safety, we're in a new line of buying for communications right now, so I want to keep that equipment purchases the same. We've always had Minotaur 5-pagers, and they're the workhorse of Motorola's, and we still have a lot of them. We got them through a grant 10 years ago. I got like 50 pagers out of that grant. It was great. We got more pages than any town in Waldo County. It was pretty cool. But now we're having to cycle some of those out. And so we're buying Minotaur 6s, and so we want to keep that 4,000 in there for purchases. And other money in repairs, that's obviously going to go towards finish out the next round of Minotaur 5 repairs. So we can keep those on board and radios. The dispatch system just changed over to a new repeater tower in Northport. So in order to do that, we had to have some work done to our radios and stuff to change over to the new repeater frequencies. So now, you know, with the digital, the law enforcement radios, they opted not to go digital for fire and EMS radios. But what was a $600 portable now for police is $1,200. So everything's kind of really jumped in cost. Public safety expenses, and Phil can tell you this because he's the treasurer for the association. It's very expensive. Anything you do with public safety is very expensive. But we kept it pretty well flatlined. I can't remember what the percentage was, but I think we've kept it pretty close to what we was requesting last year. In the ambulance, do you want to jump into ambulance real quick on right there?
Can I go back first?
Sure.
Public safety at the top of page 6, under 30-13. You see the expenses to date are $44,714. That's because we did buy the police cruiser. And
Yeah.
that money, when it's finished, because there's still things being done to it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to transfer it out of the capital reserve, which has about 61,000. I just want to make one swipe out, so that's why. And you expect that vehicle?
Hopefully within the next month. It's been slow. We went to a company in Massachusetts when we set up the 13 that we have out there now. And it was a conveyor line. I mean, they had that thing set up in 3 days. Well, of course, we didn't want to have to do everything out of Haverhill, Massachusetts at the time, so we used a company out of Carmel. And everything's done on it except for the lights and stuff, so hopefully we'll have it in the next month. That one's a hybrid, so it'll be exciting to kind of get that on the road. It's already been lettered and everything, it's just waiting for the lights and console to be put in. Setting them up is, they come basically with just seats in them, and then they put the consoles in and stuff.
You're gonna put a cage in it?
There's 2 cages. There's one that separates it from the very back of the SUV, and then there's one that separates it from the driver. Did you guys ever hear the story of how we got our first cage? We had this old Crown Vic, and I was driving up on the Route 1. This is back when we used the ferry for transporting prisoners at night. And this was like
Good old
90,
days.
it was 1990. Well, they frowned on it, but anyway, so I was driving up on through Route 1 one night, and I had a guy that was on federal warrants, out of Texas actually, for firearms. And the guy laid back in the seat and brought his feet up and kicked the headrest off the back of the seat and set me face first in the steering wheel.
It's a bad night.
So
Was he able to walk afterwards?
I was, yeah. So
No,
anyways,
yeah.
so, yeah, oh yeah. So anyways, Seabury was just finishing out the end of his tenure as town manager. He says, because I had to go to the hospital, he says, this cost us almost $1,000 in injuries. We need a cage. Yep. That's how we got up to speed.
Fascinating. I didn't know that. Sounds like stock.
Okay,
Yep.
cage is cheaper than your repair.
Well, I thought I thought I was handsome after that, but anyways, you know. Anyways, so, that's what I have for the public safety budget. Does anybody have any questions?
So going back to under the public safety services for training.
Yep.
Did you want that bumped up,
No.
or you decided no, that'd be enough?
This year we're fine coming up. We've made everything work.
Okay.
And let's see what, you know, I'm always trying to find free instructors, and some of that stuff I can teach myself. So we'll just see how we can get through the year.
The only question I have is on the, streetlights line, and just for the cost of power going up. It looks like we budgeted $1,000 less than this year. Does that feel sufficient?
Based on where we are right now, we spent almost 3,500. I mean, I can bump it back up if we,
The rates went up, so I don't know if the rates went up for streetlights, right? So we don't pay a metered rate for streetlights, but we pay X dollars per light, I believe.
I think so, and
Okay.
we've got
Does that mean
all those
maybe that's not an issue?
LEDs.
I don't know. Well, I don't know if we have a handle on whether it's an issue or not, because it might be.
It ain't going down.
But I can easily make that an 8 instead of 7 and just see.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at least it's worth looking kind of,
Yeah.
between the past couple of months. And see how those, kind of month to month comparisons, if it's jumping, I think it makes sense to,
With the February bills more than,
Yeah.
last fall.
right?
One thing I was gonna say is I believe those are going to LED. The streetlights
They
are going to LED, which ought to offset some of that.
Well, you think so?
Well, so it would certainly offset the power use, but I don't think we pay for the power use, right? We pay CMP per light, and if CMP doesn't charge us less,
Yeah.
then
We found that LEDs were cheaper than what we had for halogens before we had the LEDs.
yeah,
And they were more efficient.
they use way less power.
Well, I don't know.
Maybe CMP will give us a break.
We have LEDs, don't we?
Yeah.
Did that, I mean, I know the energy
I don't know
committee
if they're all
worked on
LEDs, but lots of them get put in.
Yeah, it's not island-wide yet.
not.
Health and welfare ambulance.
So last year we had the big bump for the on-call pay and everybody has appreciated that and it really has been it's really been good for everybody to know that they're being compensated a little bit more for their standby time. Because without them standing by, we don't have an ambulance. So that was a great increase. We don't have no requests there. On the medical supplies, because we saw a huge jump in some of our medical supplies this year. Different things that we use on the ambulance. And with some of the new airway stuff that we're gonna be jumping to, iGels instead of King LTs and stuff like that. Those are a little more expensive. We put the budget line up on medical supplies. And then dues, Atlantic Partners went up on their dues. So they're our region. Our region's gonna change. The state's going from 6 regions to 4, which means they're doing consolidation. I don't know how this is gonna go. I'm on the Atlantic Partners board for our region and we're working on that now. I can't tell you what that's gonna look like for a dues down the road, but I think we're safe for this year. If I remember right, wasn't that like $1,000, Janet? Now it used to be 600.
I can't really remember.
Yeah, the last one that they sent us had jumped a little bit, so I don't. With more towns in a region, it might not be quite as much per town, but I haven't seen an assessment yet, so I don't really know. Other than that, that was really it for ambulance. The rest of it, we kept the same as last year.
Any questions on that? Health, welfare, general assistance, ferry runs, $1,000, also in capital reserve. Looks like we have 35,000 in capital reserve and we're budgeting 20 more this year.
Yeah, that's something you may wish to knock down. We've budgeted 22,000 this year and we've already spent 11,720 through January's probably expenses. So it's just one of those things you just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I vote to keep it as the 20, especially seeing that halfway through it's half of it.
And it's nice to have that 35 there if for some reason we went over.
General assistance, fix that.
Bumping that up a little,
Why is that?
because I anticipate perhaps more cases.
Is that with the heating and that kind of general
Could be
assistance?
heating, it could be rent,
Oils,
could be
stuff like that.
electricity, it could be it's taxes.
Right,
I can submit even for taxes, for reimbursement, and we get 80% now back from, used to be 50%. Now we get 80% back from the state, so
Oh, very good.
that's pretty good.
Mutual aid Northeast ambulance pickup.
This is a new one, and Fred might want to speak to this too, but, this is Northeast Ambulance that meets our ambulance in Lincolnville and runs people to wherever. And they now charge us, well, it started last year, $500 a pickup, and they call it mutual aid. So I decided to break it out of, I forget where I was paying for it out of this year, but I said, let's break it out and see how much. Cause we just had a bill, they send a bill every 6 months, we just had a bill for, it was $8,500, I think it
Every
was the
6
last
months?
warrant. That's
That seems a little unreasonable.
Unfortunately, that's,
fair system.
it's more of a Knox County thing, but when we go to Penn Bay with patients, they come and get our Penn Bay patients. Belfast usually picks up our Waldo County patients. The city of Belfast is not charging us a mutual aid fee. I hope it stays that way. When Jim Richards was chief there, he always looked at me and he says, we all look out for each other, you know, so that's always been the mentality of, you know, being close like that. Belfast has been a good partner for us through the years. Northeast is not a municipal funded. They're funded through whatever the stipend is from each town.
Private.
When they come down to Lincolnville to pick up a patient, if I remember right, Jan, it's 500.
Yeah,
It's $500 every time they come down. And then they also are able to charge the patient for the run to the hospital. So no, we're not paying for the patient, we're paying the mutual aid fee to get them to come to Lincolnville Beach. So a lot of the time, it's either there's no coverage at the health center or there's not enough coverage for the EMS people, or it's a storm and we don't dare put the ambulance at the hospital. On our day runs now, I've finagled it around where we have to have an on-call crew when the ambulance goes all the way to the hospital. And so when somebody comes in on our electronic device and says they can stand by the second truck, we pay them on-call time at that time. And I think at some point, we might have to give them hourly pay call to cover that second truck while we go to the hospital, because we need to have coverage. We've gone to the hospital with critical patients without anybody on call before, but since they've been running the summer schedule, that's a little more doable, you know, because we're not gonna leave the truck over there for a couple, 3 hours. The goal is to send our trucks to the hospital every chance we get. It makes me cringe unloading a patient in Lincolnville Beach. I know every EMT and every driver on that ambulance has shed a tear doing that before. We don't like doing that. So we're working with different ways of doing it, trying to make sure our trucks are going all the way to the hospital and not having, and the other thing is Northeast, we're pulling them away from their coverage zone. So if they have, and you see them in the paper, if they have a 2-car crash in Rockport, they don't have their second truck down there to cover that call. And then they're taking Rockland, you know, everybody's backfilling and taking away from another town. So we're really working hard to do those daytime runs all the way to the hospital. Nighttime is a little different. You know, we're being very careful, but as you can see in some of the numbers that we've handed in, the nighttime calls have dropped dramatically compared to what they used to be. On the latest sheet that I handed out to the emergency boat committee, in 2019, we ran 30 special trips. And I think on this last one, we had 5 or 6. So our new triaging system that we're trying to do, I know it's not always popular, but it's saving people $1,000 a run. But then when you add 1,000 and then a $500 mutual aid fee, Alsboro ambulance bill, and then the Northeast ambulance bill or Belfast ambulance bill, that's a big bill. So I can tell you that our goal is not to even have an $8,000 bill.
Yeah.
So we're doing the best we can on that.
I'd like to say that this kind of came about because in the Lincolnville, so Lincolnville, Camden, whoever else has a contract with them, is charged for the number of pickups in Lincolnville. So here we were having a lot of runs. Northeast was coming up to Lincolnville, and that kind of inflated their,
Fell under Lincoln.
yeah.
They were
They,
charging
they
Lincoln
said,
Bill for it.
well, I don't think we have this many runs. You know, so that's kind of how it got, back to Northeast, so that's why we started.
So the chief for Northeast of the Rockport base is actually somebody I know very well, and we communicate quite a bit. The now the executive director for Northeast Ambulance used to be our regional director, who's Rick Petrie. Some of you might know him, some might not. So we have a connection at their office. I don't know if that really matters a lot, but we're working it all the time, trying to make sure that we're,
Treated fairly.
yeah, you know, it's a lot. There's a lot to it.
Any questions about that? Health center subsidy, we're not gonna go through the health center's budget right
Correct.
now.
I mean, I've got that tentative amount in there because I wanted to plug it in, but until I talk back with Dory, she's on vacation. She'll be back Monday, and we'll try to firm up with she and Owen and whoever else is over there. Numbers.
Health, welfare, line studies, nothing, sea level rise, nothing yet.
So the 9901, it says that it's inactive, but we spent $425 out of it.
We have expenses every year, but we don't budget for it. That money at the end of the year, I take from the capital reserve that was their reduction, which now it has
Line,
$8,137 in it. Each year I just kind of draft from it.
Gotcha.
It's for websites, other things, mailings, brochures that Linda and the committee do.
any other, what? We don't have to take up sea level rise right now, Shay, unless you have a number that you think you wanna put in there.
No, I'd like to sit with Janet and just talk through the best way to do the grant administration. And then kind of come with a,
Yeah, I think we do need an
Number around that.
expense line. That's why I plugged it in
Yeah.
there, because we'll be.
Did you pick your consultant yet?
we are in,
Negotiating.
yes, we're in, but we have some exciting options, so I look forward to news soon.
Are we continuing with public works?
Oh, you can. I mean, then it just doesn't get done. Next, up to you all. Because next time it will be the health center.
Lauren had to leave.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Lauren. She's gone.
We're almost at 6 o'clock. Usually budget meetings are an hour. We can adjourn, we can continue with public work and look at stuff like road maintenance, whatever anybody else is, what's the preference of the group? One more section? No more section?
Either way.
It doesn't look like there's anything big that's changed in it.
There you go.
We can knock it.
We're gonna keep going. 45-1, public works, road maintenance.
Thank you guys so much.
Sure, folks have a good evening. Stay out of trouble. No thanks.
Sorry, you guys.
It does.
Okay, supplies, culverts were ordered.
Yes, I mean, sometimes, as you'll see with the budget, nothing has been spent yet, for instance, those culverts, but Peter just put an order in.
Spend it in the spring. It's hard to do the road work right now.
Yeah, and just storing them, but they are, $585 each.
Plus
So,
install, right?
Hmm?
Plus the cost to install.
and then that's the install, but just having some on hand.
Okay, maintenance, ferry charges, shoulder work, ditching, 30,000. Looks like historically we spent 23, 17, and now 9 to date.
Yeah, and this is the time of year he will begin doing more. Peter's been working on, dirt roads that have been impassable.
Mhm.
And that's this time of year.
Some work happened on Church Turn over the winter. That got really ugly there for a brief minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was nice that it got fixed. Got storm damage, summer gravel. Road mowing contract, safe roads committee, that's just striping the roads. Any thoughts, any questions on the public works / road maintenance?
And I haven't put anything in there for paving, my big blue box there.
We got almost 500,000.
Correct. So I'm thinking, you know, and I do wanna do some paving this year, may not be a huge amount, but I think we're okay, so if you don't wanna put anything
That's probably the end of the budget
in there,
discussion,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
See what that comes out to,
Yeah, and see where we are with
Yeah.
budgeting. Public works personnel,
Cost of living.
all
Cost of
cost of
living.
living, supplies, equipment repairs, equipment purchases, travel, ferry fares, vehicle operation. What's vehicle operation like? Fuel and oil
Fuel.
changes?
Yeah,
Public works, snow removal, supplies are going up. Salt's going down. Sand, winter sand,
winter sand, summer sand.
snow removal, when's the snow removal contract up?
It's good through August 26th.
That's a while. Okay.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Hmm.
If the snow removal contract is 180,000, why do we budget 185,000?
Because he also gets a little extra money for putting it up,
Putting what up?
putting up the sand. I mean, mixing the sand with the dirt, and that's not in the contract.
Okay.
So. Mixing it, or he pays his people to, when the sand, I mean, when the salt comes, mix the salt with the sand.
Salt with the sand, and you don't get a ready-made mix.
No, you buy the soil and you buy the salt. They come separately and,
I don't have a solid understanding. I mean, I guess.
yeah,
I
no,
understand
no
the
one's ever
principle of
mentioned.
Mixing two things together.
There's a business.
Yeah, there's dirt and then there's salt. I mean, it's winter sand and then there's summer sand.
And the snow removal is purely plowing all the roads.
Correct.
And not mixing the stuff
Correct.
you put on the roads. And
I got
snow-
tired of paying him that and not having it, and I should have, of course, it was years into the contract. Should have made it extra.
And the snow removal contract doesn't cover the material. The town buys the salt
Correct.
and the sand,
Alright, he's liable for his people and
the fuel and
the
truck
fuel and the
maintenance.
gas. And he's never mentioned anything about, years ago, it was always a thing about maybe if the fuel went up, you know, to renegotiate someone's contract. And no one's ever done that. I'm surprised, really, but
Let's not make that
I know.
louder.
I mean, that would be, they have an opportunity to bid and put in whatever terms they want to put in when they bid, right?
Right,
And they have not done that, so. We'll cross that bridge in 2026, it looks like.
Salt supplies and sand supply is okay now at this time?
at
We
this
have
price,
enough, yeah,
yes,
get
Yeah.
through the rest of the. winter.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Public Works, Building Repair and Maintenance, Kinnick Center, generator, annual maintenance. How come that's here?
Because we, claim it as a, Red Cross site. When it was put in there, the
The
town.
warming center.
Yes,
Okay, that
yeah,
makes sense.
so that's
I say that,
our
like,
agreement.
it's a town expense, whether the pays.
Yeah,
or the
I
school
don't
pays.
think we paid for it, but we must agree to do the maintenance on it too.
Yeah, okay, whatever, I was just curious. Library, $5,000, museum, 28,000, this is the restoration and heat. Where does that stand?
They have, they're not planning big things with the budget like they did last year. They're gonna try to get grants going forward, so
The painting went well and looks
they
good.
did. Yeah, that guy is great, really. We did some windows.
So but that 28 one, what does that cover? Because the 55 was a big one-time jump because of the painting the
Restoration
tower.
Painting the tower. That was
But this year it
mostly-
looks like,
He has,
Just levitate inside? Is that?
partial. No, I think that's something that we were trying to, I think I did find some money to do that.
The renovation?
Inside of the museum itself, not inside the tower, but where someone's going to be working, because I think the fellow will want to be there this summer and.
So what is the 28,000
All right,
for?
so there, we have to shingle the L, the the roof between the tower and the museum, that low down. Then we have, so he wants to encapsulate and paint the interior of the lighthouse tower. That is going to be a grant. Upstairs of the keeper's house, that was going to be a grant. That's 23,000. One was 46. Then this includes Seacoast Security. You remember they wanted to do security, fire alarm estimate for
I
the,
don't know that I want to put money in the budget for security at the White House personally. My own personal view.
that was gonna be $7,600, and then plus $600 a year monitoring, $50 a month. So that's where those amounts came up to 27,500.
Maybe we break this out and talk about it at another meeting.
I agree, I think we should wait, yep.
Let's break it out and talk and bring this up at the next meeting. We can have a more thoughtful discussion about it. Okay, moving on. Town office, $20,000 for repairs and maintenance. Airport, 2,000. What do we do at the airport? Mowing?
That's mowing, and it's probably buying a couple wind socks a year.
Town beach, $2,000. It's nice down there. I like going to town beach. Ball field, tennis, new playground equipment. A need?
Yeah, right now I'm going to buy a small playground
Are they
set.
taking down some of the stuff that's there? It's sort of rotten.
Yeah, and that's another thing on my list. Insurance wants it. But they want to see a replacement plan. So I'm gonna get that taken down and start with a small piece section, which is about 5,000. And then I thought if I had another 5, maybe it could be some more, a couple other things, because it will look small compared to what was there. But yeah, does look bad.
If you're taking advice on areas to start with, when you're looking at it from the soccer field, that slide that comes down, there's a gap between the slide and the roof that unfortunately Augie's head will fit through. And I say this
Because you've seen it.
4 times during soccer games, little kids are climbing up there and they're just getting caught wrong. And it is the world's worst scream. And so if you start there, I will love you forever.
Well, I think the whole
Kids' heads
thing's gonna
stuck out of the
Okay.
slide.
And then, yeah.
Jen McFarland's grandson was the first one to do it, and I thought that everyone was about to have an aneurysm. And it was like, okay, we just have to turn you, and of course, little kids don't want to turn when they're scared and they're freaked out, and you do it and you pop them through, and it's like, oh.
Yeah.
And
Kids-
45 seconds later, somebody else was like, oh, that's how he did it, and it was like, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So that-
would be well to not have kids' heads stuck. It's stuff.
The top of the slide. And it's a freak location,
Yeah, okay.
so I'm all for it. I'll give you 5 grand for that one.
Town garage. Recycling, what are we doing with that?
recycle,
Project that's earmarked for, it's more than we've spent. I mean, I see that we allocated 5,000 last year, but we really haven't spent even $1,000 in recent history.
yeah, I apologize, I can't remember what that was, there were a couple.
Is that for the,
things?
he wanted a tractor thing in order to squish it down, is that what that is?
No, this is for the actual building and
Oh, okay.
itself. I will look into that and check, I think I have some things to do there, again, with this main municipal, our risk insurance, I've got a big stack of things I've been working on, the harbor needed things, the meadow pond, they went for every building, the lighthouse, and things that need to be corrected, and some electrical things, which Scott Sinkowitz has nicely stayed on and helped us finish some things. But I think that's what, and that will be my next, when I have a minute to look at.
There's a couple things we'll bring up next time. Infrastructure resiliency, island fellow, that's already, that's submitted already here.
Yes.
Yeah, and I didn't know if there was anything else, Shay, that you wanted to go with that.
No, we can find a time, maybe, don't know what day of the week it is, Wednesday. We'll find a time between now and next Wednesday is it, and go through the grants and how we want to track that and, do it all at once, if that would be okay.
Yeah,
Great.
Okay, Public Works, Energy Committee. Travel to meetings, $1,000, town office continuing weatherization, is there something that this $49,000 this year is being left for?
They're still continuing with the apartment above, and then also into, I think it's to help with the library and different things, with the intention of weatherization.
Okay, it looks like we still have, for this year in the budget, $40,000 roughly.
I think things just haven't been billed out yet, perhaps,
I just wanna make sure that
Yeah.
we're not trying to,
Evergreen and all of that still, I don't think we've received the bill on him yet.
but the expectation is that we're gonna be spending $100,000 total over this year and the next year.
Yes.
yeah, I apologize for not giving you Myra had sent me. It's for a library EV charger, that's 7,000. Town office EV charger, 7,000. Library heat pumps, 20,000, which we're doing one now, I think, so this must be more.
Trying to work with Evergreen on
Yeah,
that.
town office LED upgrades, 10,000, and energy jamboree, 5,000. So that's where she came up with the 49.
Are we upgrading the EV charging station we have here, or is that because of the cruiser? We're adding another one.
I'm not sure.
Is there a charger here with a cord that exists you can pull up into the town
You can
office?
plug right outside.
It's a plug, it's not a
It's a
charger.
plug, you come with your own.
And I think that they're
And there's
planning
two
to
different
upgrade
plugs.
it with,
Yeah, I
to
don't
have
think
the
it's-
accessibility that you could just pull up and charge
It's sort of
without having your
a
cord
little
with you.
less usual to have just a plug.
It's very slow. People,
Right.
they've used it, have left their car overnight.
They come down to the boat yard, use our charger.
Oh, do they?
It's
It's like
just-
seeing the Tesla parked up there.
But I think that that was one of it, is that that would needed upgraded, especially after, because I think the one at the ICC is a better one.
Yeah.
That has the cord and has everything else.
Yeah.
And then, but it's also building the box and the recognition of it.
Right.
And so, because I couldn't tell you right now where you can plug in it out here.
I couldn't.
It's right by the burn box, to the right of the burn box.
Fun
And
fact,
there's
I
a
don't know. what the
sign
burn
out-
box is.
I don't even know what time of year yet.
I am not today.
Next to Fred's store, Mert's store.
Oh, okay.
Any thoughts on that before we move on?
I wanted to just bring to your attention under Public Works Building Repair and Maintenance. I've added two, one for Big Tree Beach
Mhm.
and the salt shed building, just to kind of keep that separate, because I have had expenses from the salt shed again due to the insurance things that had to be done there. So instead of, I paid for it out of the recycle
What does the
building.
insurance company wants to do there?
Oh, there was several things, other than making sure the sand is not up above the red line in the village. There were electrical, the box needed to be replaced, it was rusty, something else, they wanted to make sure you keep a space away from the box that gets shut off, and that because of the solar panels, they want to make sure someone could, there's several things, so.
Just curious, curiosity.
And Big Tree Beach, I don't really know I haven't had time to think or talk with the Harbor Committee if they have any thoughts for that, but I know Earl has been saying for a year that Dagger forever was gonna, Dacre, excuse me, was gonna go there and do some cleanup, getting rid of those big things, and we wanted to put a porta potty there. Instead of having two over at Mosley Dock, I'm going to.
Sounds reasonable. Yeah, waste removal. So, something dues. Waste removal. Jeff. The transfer station, always very helpful when I go. Seasonal helper, does that person exist?
Well, sometimes it's Keith Pendleton will help out, and sometimes it's, Bill Shoppy has helped out up there.
CMP power, that is going up big time. Those are higher on CMP plus. Fuel oil is also up. Equipment purchases are down. What is hazardous waste collection is?
That's when he has that day, once a year, or I think that they come out and gather up things that people dropped off and he's collected, and So that's what it
Paint and stuff
cost.
like that.
The last time was $5,700 for all we took.
Good to dispose of it properly, then.
Correct, so it might not be that much next time, but
Right.
Recycling expenses, what are the bags?
trash bags.
So the town pays $20,000. We've had this conversation, I think, for a few years about whether we charge less than it actually costs the town to do.
We
this.
make money on the bags.
We do.
I will, come back with that expense, but we do. And we made more probably this year, because I bought those bogus bags, the ones from, because we get a
From
discount.
Whistler or whatever.
They're like the run over, they're a run over, because I would order ours, she said, well, it's gonna take, months to get them because for them to set up. And then they said, well, I have these bags from this town, that's why. And you get a discount, so.
Yeah, we talked about trying to make sure that we were recouping enough in certain areas last year. One of them being demolition bin.
Right, I've got the fee recommendations and stuff like that, and so we're waiting for budget to come around to, it's basically a 15% increase across the board is what I'm gonna recommend.
Great. It sounds reasonable. I mean, without looking at it, it sounds on its face relatively reasonable. I think we
Yeah.
raised rates in.
Forever that I could find. But then it was going off of Belfast, Northport, and then I also pulled from further in like Union and like their disposal fees and stuff like that, and raising ours 15 put us ballpark, and a lot of it, little over in some, but we have more construction and more cost for it, so it makes more sense.
Way more cost up here to deal with it with the ferry.
Exactly.
I would love to see all contractors have a demo bin on the site too.
So
If there was a way to,
that's something that can be handled as part of the permitting process.
that would save us so much, because they go up there and they fill it up and then they have to
So
shut it
that's a
down.
conversation that ought to be had with the, planning board. And about requirements for permitting, and about whether, I don't know if that's something that they can, of their own initiative do, or that's something we might wanna look at, changes to our local code about what we're gonna require for a project over X size or something to require it. But it's not an unreasonable thing to take some of the burden off of the town on a very large project that's going to have that type of sort of debris removal need, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it still would be busy on the ferry, other trucks coming to remove these bins, but it wouldn't be on our dime.
Yeah, I mean, it's busy and it's probably, I suspect it's not really a significant cost increase for a contractor in terms of what they'll save from having to bring everything to the transfer
Right.
station. As compared to how much it costs to have a demo bin on the island, I suspect it's really not a huge cost, and certainly not depending on the scale of the project. It's not going to be an appreciable cost compared to the overall cost of the project.
No.
So I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to do, and perhaps the conversation ought to start with the planning board. Mowing. Bob Acorn,
He mows the field up there.
yeah,
I
That's a
mean,
bid, right?
Correct.
when's that contract? That's a 2-year
I think
contract?
it's a couple years. I think it's
No, maybe.
not this year, it's next year. I think we did it last year.
Here's annual report, that's it. Anybody have any thoughts, questions about these things? Hearing none, I don't really wanna go on to the library right now, I think we ought to be done. If everybody's
Good.
on board, let's adjourn until next week, where we can pick up some of the things we talked about today, as well as some new stuff. No motion needed, it's just a workshop. We're done. Good night, everybody.